If there's one thing history keeps teaching us, it's that human resilience has far deeper roots than most people today realize. Before generators, batteries and backup power banks, ordinary people endured war, famine, collapse and brutal winters with skills that weren't fancy, but they were effective. And if you're watching The Prepper Historian, you're already the kind of person who appreciates that kind of hard-earned wisdom. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe, because the knowledge in this channel isn't recycled trivia. It's the kind of information that serious historians and committed survivalists actually use. Now, let's get into the forgotten methods that carried entire communities through hell without a single watt of electricity. We start with the ancient art of controlling microclimates because people survived by manipulating their environment, not running from it. Long before thermostats existed, families created small pockets of stable warmth by stacking earth, stone, or even livestock around their living spaces. Vikings built longhouses where the body heat of animals warmed human sleeping quarters. Medieval peasants lined windward walls with clay-packed wattle to trap convective heat. You can still use this principle today by building low-tech thermal mass. A simple example is placing tightly packed drums of water or stone along the inner walls of a shed or cabin. They absorb daytime heat and release it through the night. In cold climates, digging sleeping trenches a foot or two below ground stabilizes temperature and reduces wind chill. It sounds primitive until you feel that difference firsthand. We move to the forgotten method of banking fire instead of constantly rebuilding it. Across Europe, Asia and frontier America, people didn't let their fires die overnight. They smothered glowing coals under ash, dung or charred bark to keep an ember alive until morning. One good ember was worth hours of time and precious fuel. The practical lesson today is simple. Learn to maintain heat without restarting from zero. If you use a wood stove, bury a few glowing coals in fine ash before bed. They'll hold warmth until morning when you blow them back into flame with a handful of birch bark or dry grass. Even in an outdoor survival situation, a coal saved in punkwood can mean the difference between staying warm and hypothermia. This isn't nostalgia. It's mechanical efficiency. We explore the method of fermented preservation because people didn't just store food, they made it safe through controlled rot. Before refrigerators, entire cultures survived harsh winters through fermentation. Koreans didn't invent kimchi for taste, they invented it for survival. Eastern Europeans relied on sauerkraut because it remained edible for months without spoiling, while providing vitamin C that prevented scurvy. You can apply this same strategy with cabbage, carrots, onions, or wild edible roots. A simple brine, a clean jar, and a dark corner of your home can produce shelf-stable nutrition in a crisis. If supply chains fail, your biggest threat won't be starvation. It'll be nutrient deficiency. Fermentation covers that gap better than any freeze-dried pack. Right, so we move on to the low-tech water purification methods that honestly save far more lives than swords or guns ever did. Charcoal filtration didn't start with modern survival schools. It actually began with ancient Indo-Persian travellers who filtered water through the layers of sand, gravel and charcoal. Civil War soldiers, for example, boiled creek water with crushed charcoal to eliminate foul taste and pathogens. You can replicate it today with 3 layers: coarse sand, small gravel, and a thick bed of clean charcoal from hardwood. Just pour water slowly through the system, then boil it. Even in a modern grid-down scenario, you can build this in minutes from natural materials. It's not glamorous, but historically it worked for millions. We continue with the overlooked method of insulated cooking because, well, fuel scarcity was the enemy long before electricity ever entered the picture. Haybox cooking, used by families during both world wars, relied on trapping heat inside an insulated container to cook food slowly. Women would bring a pot to a rolling boil, then bury it in a box filled with hay, wool or rags. Hours later, the food was cooked without burning a single extra stick of wood or lump of coal. You can replicate this with a modern cooler lined with towels. Boil rice, beans or stew for 5 minutes, seal it inside, and let retained heat finish the work. In any long-term crisis, fuel savings aren't optional. They're survival. We now look at passive cooling techniques because civilizations learned how to stay cool centuries before fans existed. Ancient Persians mastered the windcatcher, a structure that funneled breezes downward to cool homes. Romans used thick stone walls and shaded courtyards to reduce heat. Early Americans buried root cellars to keep vegetables fresh year-round. You can apply this by using cross-ventilation, dark cloth shade barriers, and buried storage pits insulated with straw. Even the simple act of orienting your shelter's openings away from late afternoon sun follows a principle our ancestors perfected. Cooling without electricity isn't guesswork, it's architectural history. We end with the critical method of community-based resource pooling because, honestly, nobody survived alone. Throughout history, whether during the Black Death, the Irish famine, or the Great Depression, towns pooled skills and supplies. One family might preserve meat, another might weave rope, another might maintain tools. When modern people fantasize about lone wolf survival, they ignore the reality. Entire generations only made it because they operated like living networks. You can practice this now by forming a small preparedness circle. Trade skills, share harvests, split costs for tools, and create redundancy that mirrors historical survival groups. Even two families cooperating can replicate the resilience of a small medieval household. Humanity survived hell not through convenience, but through ingenuity. These methods aren't museum pieces. They work today. If you found this guide valuable, subscribe to The Prepper Historian and share it with someone who actually appreciates real history and real preparedness.